the last keynote of the day. Hope I get your attention. Thank you, QI, for this opportunity. And I'm going to talk about transformational strategies in quality engineering. That's me. Anyway, I was already introduced a lot, so let me go ahead with my agenda. I think the last 2 days have been, there were multiple forums where we talked about the topic of quality engineering. And we talked about full stack QEs, we talked about performance, automation. I think the list goes endless. And today, what I want to consolidate, since I'm the last keynote speaker, is a journey. Is a journey which has been put together in terms of the experiences gathered so far in the last couple of years. So I will be talking about the industry perspective. A lot of it is, in fact, covered by a lot of my peers who came here and talked about it as keynotes and also around the papers. I'll go on to talk about that why we focus on this quality engineering. Then go on to talk about certain strategies which make sense through the key focus areas. And then we will go on to talk about what does a typical journey look like and some key takeaways from this. Now, the start is like this. As you see in this slide, there are people who are there below and there are people who have reached at the top. And that's where we are, As a quality engineering professional, there are some who have already reached there in terms of they are doing performance, they are doing automation, they are there embedded into the Scrum teams, and there are some who are trying to find a space. Hey, do I go the side of becoming a SME in quality engineering, or do I really go back and go into becoming a develop my technical acumen to find myself a space in performance and automation? And that's where we are caught in between. I think what's important to understand is a lot of the industry's perspective, which you are already aware. People are talking about open source tools. People are talking about the fact that there is a need. There is a need for specialists. But remember, in our quality engineering industry or quality assurance, we have a lot of people who carry the business knowledge. And this attempt was to talk about the both facets. One is the part of the world where we are good as SMEs, and we do have a line for the future. And we have the other part of the world where we see that, I have good technical acumen, and I would like to climb the ladder of automation or performance. And with that, this is what the speed to market agenda is all about. We have the left side, which is our typical space where we were, right? We had unit, we had integration, we had more time which we spent, around integration. We had more time which we spent around our manual, and we were so proud to talk about the defects we logged. We spent our time towards test planning, test strategy, test case designing. Yes, automation was there, was pretty much confined to a group of automation engineers. And then came this time for which we have been hearing a lot in the last 2 days, where we are saying, hey, you know what? I need to go shift left. Yes, that's true. I need to go shift left. I need to focus more and more time on unit testing. We are talking about automation at different levels. We are talking about APIs. We are talking about web. We are talking about mobile. Today, we have so many smart, BPM smart products like Salesforce, Pega. We are talking about mobile. So the list is endless. The list is endless. Henceforth, of course, there is a time, and the time is now that we need to focus towards the various kinds of test automation we are talking about. We need to talk about somewhere in the keynote, we also talked about a systems team. I was attending a paper, and that systems team is about end-to-end automation. Well, yes, that's where one of the areas where the SME knowledge is needed. Automation is needed, but certainly you need the SME knowledge too. And then we are talking about performance, we are talking about security. I do agree there is a need to focus towards that. And with that, we have the left side, which is the quality assurance, and we have the right side, which is the quality engineers. Quality assurance, yes, we were good at certain things which we need to continue further. We were good in understanding the domain. And tomorrow, in the agile world, yes, there is a progression for us. There is a progression for us to become product owners. There is a progression for us to maybe become Scrum Masters too. And I attended the Conformic presentation where we are talking about requirements. Yes, if I am able to understand the business, those are certain careers which are open for me as a quality assurance. Not everybody can become a person who wants to climb to the technical line. But yes, the transition is there, but I think it is to be holistically understood that where we need to place our quality engineers, we need to go back and I think the keynote before this was talking about skills. Yes, it is very important to focus on skills. It is time now to identify our community, our set of people that where their skill lie. If a person is really good in SME skills, let's invest on that. Let's put that person into roles which are nearer to the business. Yes, quality engineering is also about an amalgamation of a person who has picked up automation or who wants to become good in performance or in security. It is very important to have a business sense, the understanding of the business. That pretty much will certify the fact that of a full stack QE. With that, I think we are all talking about enhancing the QA skills. And with that, I want to go back to the fact that to achieve this, there is a journey towards it. There is a focus towards people. There is a focus towards the process. There is a focus towards the technology. Not to forget the fact that there is equal focus required in all of these areas. Let's deep dive. Let's deep dive towards people. And in the people side, it is, as I said, the first point is to do a deep dive on the various skills which are there in the testing group. There are people who are in manual testing. There are people who are in test automation. There are people who are maybe very less, but maybe some of them have previous experience in non-functional. There are people who are software developers. And how to enhance this group? Such a diverse group. We need to keep the motivation ticking. And some of the strategies which have worked is that in this progression, you will find some manual testers who have the passion to learn fast, to grasp more, and they may have the technical acumen to drive themselves towards becoming. And some of the earlier keynote speakers talked about software development, engineer, and test. Yes, that's a progression career for them. Second, there would be people who are good SMEs. For them, as I said, the roles of product owners or Scrum Masters would be a value addition to their career. Third, there could be certain people who are doing some automation and they might like to stay in the automation part of the world and pretty much help in doing the regression, in doing justice to the regression automation suits, or helping in inclusion of the regression early on in the life cycle, so that at the in-sprint stage, we are able to bring in sprint automation and some part of regression too. There will be some engineers who are developers. And with these three-pronged approaches, so if you have to really develop a very good software development engineer in test community, you need to have certain people who are good developers, who are interested to work in testing. Second, to bring in a good flavor from the market, you need to hire some people from the market who are working as software development engineer in tests. And third, there could be certain automation engineers who have a passion towards that. And with that, I think some of the benefits are that, yes, you will be able to increase the SDET penetration. You will be able to have some performance testers, of course, because when you are in Agile, you need to talk about the in-sprint performance. And not to forget that our ultimate aim from the people perspective is that we want to bring in more and more of in-sprint automation. And when I'm talking about in-sprint automation, it's both functional as well as non-functional. And with that, I would also like to mention that there are certain tools and strategies which we need to use from a people perspective to increase the drive we want to do. We would like to have certain mentor-mentee programs, which means that in a Scrum team where you have 2 testers, you have one tester who has good SME knowledge and the second tester who has an automation knowledge. That kind of has worked very well. And what happens is that when you have such a mix, it is the automation person who is learning the SME knowledge and the SME who is there as the second Scrum tester is picking up the automation skills from the second tester. The second approach, yes, it is important to have certain open forums, and there could be varied ways of doing it. They could be through having a common wiki in place, or it could be towards socializing events. I was just having a conversation with Rajni, and she mentioned about the Bhagathon event. There could be certain other events where you have events totally focused towards automation, or maybe even developing certain utilities and solution accelerators. Another point which I want to highlight is that it is important to celebrate the success in the interim, which means that small achievements of a person's, of people who have really transformed themselves in some months, it's a moment of celebration which needs to be done through certain events which happen time to time. With that, I want to go towards giving you a view that how does the skill cloud really look at us. If you see, there are 3 skill clouds, you know. There is one community which is automation and SDETs, and we are talking about various technologies. I think in the last 2 days, we learned, right? It's not about one framework, it's not about one tool, but it's about a culmination of many tools which serve the purpose in the entire journey. The second, which I say, are the people who are SMEs, and even the leads and the managers, and even the program management people. We need to find a place for them as well, because they have been into the system and they have quite a lot of business knowledge, and they are the apt candidates to help us in becoming the product owners, the Scrum Masters. And the third cloud is specialized skills. We are now talking about full stack QEs. So there is a level of progression for our automation and SDETs to ultimately arrive here, where they talk about automation, they talk about SDET, they are doing in-sprint performance, they are doing in-sprint security. Today, we are talking a lot about customer experience, which means that a full stack QE needs to have a knowledge around that. We are talking about compliance, so a full stack QE need to have a knowledge about that. And that's how it has worked for us, it has worked for me. This is how we should be looking at the skill cloud for our organization. And that's about people. I'll be going next to the process part. Now, how do we make this happen? You know, there is so much to do in terms of keeping the motivation of the people, and it can only be done if we have a well-grounded process. I think it has to be multi-pronged in terms of thinking about each of these communities, which I just shared in my previous slide. We are talking about learning maps, which is something very basic, but it's integral. We need to think from our 3-pronged groups and then design our learning maps. Second, culture. It takes time, but it is very important to build the culture, to have the coaches, to have softly bring the enthusiasm in our community towards certifications, towards the SAFE certification or towards the many other agile certifications, and then find out a progression towards how do we bring the toll gates in place. What should be the typical journey of a role of a tester who is there in a project? Because in agile, in a Scrum team, it has to be continuous automation. You need to have automation testers in projects. And at the same time, we are talking about center of excellence. We are talking about center of excellence where you have a team of architects. So from a process perspective, it is very important to understand that what would be the roles and responsibilities of a tester, automation tester, in a Scrum team, and what would be the handshakes and the toll gates between the architects and your testers which are working in the Scrum teams. Because remember, Agile is rapid. And at the same time, it's important to keep our both parts of the people motivated. The architects need to be motivated, and at the same time, my project testers need to be motivated too. And in one of the keynotes before, we were talking about the inherent challenges that today in the testing community, we have testers, we have our leads and managers too. We need to find out the right fitment and the right level of progression so that we are able to keep these teams motivated in such a transient phase we are in. And with that, if we are focusing on all of these aspects, I think at the end of it, we will be able to say that we have been able to achieve Agile adoption in so much percentage of our projects, and it has worked for me. Second, we should be able to talk about the culture in terms of data, which says that we have so many Agile professionals who have implemented in the Agile projects. With that, I think it's very important to talk about the technology. What is a typical technology stack for a quality engineer? And this is what a technology stack would look like. There will be certain ingrown tools because we are talking about APIs. Everything now is built on APIs. So we need to have some commoditized frameworks which work for APIs, which work for our mobile, which work for our business process applications. We need to have certain commoditized frameworks which talk to some of the industry tools, like we are talking about cross-browser testing by integrating with Sauce Labs. We are talking about commoditized frameworks where we would like to integrate to mobile platforms like Perfecto. Today in the morning, we also understood about enterprise APM. And so there will be certain tools which we will develop in-house. There will be certain tools which we develop in-house will talk to industry tools. And at the same time, there will be certain platforms which our testers would pick up. For example, we will be working in Eclipse environment. And at the same time, it is very important to think about how do we make ourselves inclusive to the business. And for that, we will be imbibing to tools like Cucumber. I think in the Conformic presentation, he talked about the given, when, then statements, where our testers, the people who are really good SMEs, could help us define the acceptance criteria. And then you have the cutting across this stack towards legacy apps and towards the modern apps. And you have the specialized set of tools, because we have started talking about the performance and security also at the QE stage. With that, I think we talked about what do we need to focus around the people aspect, what do we need to focus around the process aspect, and how does a typical technology stack look for a QE. Now I think the question comes into the mind that how does a typical transformation journey look like? And that's what I really wanted to focus when I started. And of course, it's a mammoth journey. It's a very challenging journey. But I think at the start, when you're actually starting to execute Agile projects, you don't have so many automation testers. But yes, you need to sow the seeds of automation by bringing a lot of regression automation, because that is something your team correlates with. But laying the seeds of system test automation, which is automation as I move forward, is something which is going to be integral in the earlier stages of any Agile project we want to execute on. Of course, we cannot talk about terminologies like CI/CD, because people are still getting the hang of understanding what is continuous integration and continuous development. But yes, it is important for our manual testers to understand, to write the acceptance criteria by using the frameworks which are there today. I just showed Cucumber to you. Yes, that's the most important thing our testers want to focus on. And that's where our manual testers have the maximum edge, because they understand the business knowledge. They will be able to identify the acceptance criteria well. That's the start. And let's little bit shift ourselves to the next part of the journey, the next 6 months. While you are setting yourself, towards automation as we go, you are engaging your manual testers towards writing acceptance criteria, you have both parts of your community balanced, They are engaged. The automation testers are engaged to bring in automation as we go, and your manual testers are engaged to learn how do I make my acceptance criteria, how to write a given when-then statement. And that's where you start taking in the concepts of acceptance stress-driven development, wherein you go a step further in terms of the testers who wrote their Gherkinized statements. They are now quite motivated. They want to go a step ahead. You show them the internal frameworks which your teams developed, so that they get the feel that from a given when-then statements, how would you take it back to your frameworks, which would then talk about integrating with other market-ready tools. So in the 0 to 6 months, you are talking about acceptance test-driven development. You're talking about behavior-driven testing. And what's integral in the first 6 months is that you are consolidating with the business. You are talking with the business in terms of definition of the acceptance criteria. You start thinking about the UI tests, because we discussed earlier that the beauty is that we need to go shift left. Third is that, yes, we cannot negate test data failures. So we need to start thinking about the fact that how can I create an environment so that I can do my interim tests early on during the sprint. We are talking about test data management. We should be able to educate our teams towards defining the right set of data and also acclimatizing them with the metrics they want to follow. And at the same time, they are getting acclimatized with the speed factor by delivering bi-weekly or maybe in a week. And let's talk about the 6 to 12 months phase, which is interesting because at the end of 6 months, you have some projects which are following Agile. They are following acceptance test-driven development. And then you have another set of projects which are still getting there. I think what is important at that moment of time, and it has worked, is that for the Agile projects which are at a level of maturity, we take them to train them on performance aspects so that they start slowly integrating the in-sprint performance into the entire life cycle of the Scrum. And what's more important is that we continue to mature in writing our acceptance criteria well. And the last phase is all about the fact that we bring in the fact of early feedback, because of course your team would have been matured by then. And the next step is, of course, the full stack QE is our ultimate objective which we want to build. And this kind of a progression journey will help us in implementing the journey which I want to go forward with. Some of the investments, yes, investments are required. And some of the investments is that, of course, there will be an investment to bring in certain talent from the market so that we are able to expedite the learning curve. Second, we should be able to go into collaboration with our development folks because they, for example, they may be already running certain security scans at their end, and we would like to learn them and imbibe them and implement it in the QE part of the phase. And with this, I think certain things have also worked as there will be certain level of complexity where certain projects would be going on cloud. Now, when applications are going on cloud, again, it is expectation from the quality engineers to be good in performance. And that's where the study we did in the 6 to 12 months will help in taking your team to that level of maturity. And that brings me to the culmination of what a transformation journey would look like. And with that, I would like to sum up certain things. It is very important to believe in the fact that every QA may not transform into an automation tester. It is very important to enhance the skills at every level. While the last 2 days, I felt, and it was exciting to hear about the kind of progressive opportunities we have for our community, but at the same time, we need to think about the leads and managers too. The next is, it's important to pair our SMEs and automation to keep the right motivations high. It's important to include the business. So ultimately, the aim should be to have our QA community placed as product owners at the business who can actually work actively in our Scrum teams. Engineering mindset leads to development of utilities. That's a culture we need to build towards the fact that it's not about only development of framework, it's about having a solutioning mindset. The community should be able to build tools to enhance that mindset. And it's not a destination, it's a journey. And that's where I would like to stop. Thank you. It's not working.
Hello. My question is on the knowledge sharing part. So today actually this fast world actually we have very strict guidelines.
It's not very clear, this question.
There's also a lot of resource crunches. There will be multiple projects running, and we have to have, as a test team, we have to share the resources across all the projects and kind of stuff, and then multiple sprint teams as well. So it is highly rare to have a state and a QA who can jointly work in a project who can jointly share their thoughts and things. So, and most of the time actually they'll be separated on different things, and we'll be ending up and having a separate automation team to do the automation. So now just want to know how this knowledge sharing can happen and views and opinions.
So first of all, it's a good question. Your question is that when you have your SDETs and your manual testers, it is hard to bring synergies. And because the culture has been that there has been an automation team who was responsible for delivering the automation. I think the first decision we need to take is that we don't need a centralized automation team. That's the first step we need to decide. And how we need to make it happen, and this is what comes from how we have done it, is that there will be certain people who are really architects, who have developed automation frameworks. Keep that team very small team, to 3 to 4 people. And then you have certain team members who are in different progressions of automation. There are some who know something, there are some who are learning, and there are some who don't know anything, but they have a high passion to learn. The strategy would be to break the automation team and have this team of architects, very small, and the rest of the team aligning them, 1 or 2 people, to each of the other teams. And that is where the concept comes, that your architect team is a consultant SDET team, and the team members who have gone to the various teams are project SDETs. Now, it works. It works how? That, of course, the consultants get their ego, solved by the fact that, oh, I'm part of the consultant team. I'm going to consult various teams. At the same time, you are motivating the automation testers who are there in your project teams, that they have a feeling of revelation from the fact that, oh, you know what? I'm going to help my entire set of team members. So it's win-win at both sides. There will be resistance from the automation architects, because at a big bang, they start to feel that their importance will go less. But For them, that this is how the strategy works, is that you tell them that my first goal is to implement automation.
Shown that performance is not possible at the start. I disagree with you. I have also given a presentation. We can have a performance testing with the help of JUnit. So when we are writing our automation or in the development process itself, the same unit code can act as a performance script, and we can test the code performance, like memory leakage, how the code behavior will be. So I disagree on that point, that performance is not possible at the start.
Thanks for this point. But may I also add a point?
Sure.
Because this is again coming from the experience. See, think about a team where it's 80% manual. I would say 90% manual, right? Very few automation. And at that point of time, I think if we download a lot of opportunities to our team that, you know what, we are going to do functional automation, we are going to do performance automation, non-functional automation, the team kind of gets a setback. There is too much to do in a very short span of time. So what has really worked, I want to share my experience. What has really worked is that we first started our performance footprints by involving certain engineers who had earlier performance testing experience, and we kind of involved them in writing the performance test scripts. They may or they may not be involved in doing the performance test execution because you need the environment and you need other things. But that thing worked. But that was a pilot, right? We could not have made a bold statement that, you know, we have started performance testing. Yes, there could be a point in time situation where we have people in the team who are confident enough to do both, then probably this model will also work.
I'm not saying that it's being confident. The same developer can test the performance. So instead of getting, when developer has already committed the code after, so instead of getting the defects after so many commits, it's easier to fix the defects at the very starting phase. So I'm just saying that we can have a small performance test in the starting so that it saves the development cost for the whole project.
I agree, provided the model is that you have all the dev and QAs working together,
yes.
And there are no boundaries in between with respect to how the model is structured in that organization.
Yeah.
I got your point. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. So my question, the answer I think will be very need a presentation in itself. So are we going from QA to QE? I've seen like a lot of presentation on performance testing where they said performance testing is dead, performance engineering is coming up. So from 2 years from now, should I expect like people saying here that QA testing is dead, QA engineering is the way forward? Also, I want to know, how does QE fit into Agile? Like a tester, when they find a bug, the next part, are they going to change the code themselves, or they are getting a developer to do that? How does all this fit into Agile?
Good question. You're actually bringing the points which the testers are thinking now. So to your question, I think his question was that is QA testing going to die in the near future? Number one, part of your question. So I would like to take you back, 2, 3 years, maybe 5 years back. We were at that point of time talking about testing, manual testing. How do we get better in finding defects? And we always used to talk about that there will be automation, but there will be a centralized automation, and we used to always talk about a centralized TCOE model, where we have a big community and the community is really working towards finding defects. Then came a phase where we realized that when you are doing things in a centralized fashion, there is a lag. There is a lag from the perspective that if an X group wants to get things done in a particular time frame, it delays, because ultimately it's centralized. You can only have 5 to 10 architects. You cannot have a big size team of 50. Then we started realizing, and then this agile animal came, wherein it was all about speed. And then, the thought process was that at that point of time, we were thinking about totally a development and testing community different. But with speed, the challenge really comes now on the testers to become multifaceted. Now, to your question, will testing die? How I see it is that right now, we are going through a transition phase to ultimately go into the fact that yes, in some organization, testing may merge. But I see it as from a positive perspective. We will have more enhanced QEs. Today, in one of the keynote papers, we were talking about that none of the people from the quality industry have actually headed firms. With a multifaceted person who understands the technology, who understands the business, I think we are going towards a very positive direction, number one. So testing is not going to die, but we are going to get more refined, is what I understand, to do multifaceted roles. Names and roles may vary, right? We may not be called quality engineers. We may be called engineers, right? So I see it as an opportunity. At the same time, I also see it as an opportunity. I think before, we used to talk about the fact, that testers can become business analysts and this and that. But in reality, it was I would say the opportunities were less for testers. But with this shift, we will have more and more of our leads, managers, directors, because we need to think about them also. I agree with you. Your second question was around that. That we need to, we sometimes go back and think that what's going to happen to us, right? So I think that's an opportunity again for us. This is how I feel. Did I answer your question?
What?
So it's certainly, which means the tester will now have time for bigger and better things. So it's our own call to use that time and work towards bigger and better things that can contribute to the quality. So it's not going to die, it's going to become collective ownership.
Yeah, so whatever I have shared today, we have tried it, tested it, implemented it, and had a successful implementation. Today, a lot part of the organizations are actually QEs, and I have my friends over here who can vouch the fact. It's been a journey, it's interesting, and not even once I have felt that testing is not important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mili. So with this, we are, okay, one more. Last question, quick question.
It's really great that you have implemented this structure and it's successful for you right now. But what I saw is that in a slide that again, we are bringing the non-functional testing at the end of the life cycle, nearly when we had the project roughly after 6 months. But when we say we need to shift left, I imply that we need to shift the more to the non-functional testing. A tester is not just a person who makes creative test cases or who does the automation or performance testing. As a tester, I need to do each and everything possible to find that bug out. So we need to implement all of these in the starting stages. As my friend here told that performance testing can be integrated to the starting stages. All the research we too have done is that yes, it is easily possible now. We are not saying after even a week. We are saying the first day when the coder writes its first function that the function would be doing a functionality for us, we need the performance and the automated test cases right there, right then.
Good question. I think your question was that when I showed the transformation journey, I had in the 6 to 12 months frame the performance testing, right? So my attempt was to show a typical journey, that how an organization can mature from a place where you have very less automation testers and performance engineers. And also to the point you asked, that it also depends upon how structurally you are placed and what is the level of collaboration ticking between a developer and a tester. You're very right. When your start phase is at a stage where you have automation testers, you have testers who have performance engineering vast knowledge, you can certainly do it. You can certainly do it. And it also depends that if you are in an X project where you have really no boundaries, you could have projects where you have a dev and tester working together as a team member, certainly you can bring in performance. But my view of showing that slide was to show a typical journey, a reference. It can have its customization based on the level of maturity of the organization. Yeah.
Thank you, Mili. Mili would be around in tea time. You can have more discussion on this point. So with this, our presentations are over. So now the next session would be the most awaited session where we will announce the winners and we'll do the prize distribution. See you all after 15 minutes.